So, Agi, welcome to the show.
Well, it's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this. I've had some wonderful guests, and a lot of these guests are people that I've had the pleasure of sort of benefiting from their content for years, decades in some instances. But I'm particularly looking forward to our conversation because you're someone that I regard as a friend, a dear friend, that I've really got to know pretty well over the last 5 years or so. And it's really interesting sort of how we collided. I know people talk about sort of the moment that they met their first love, and when they very first saw them, and they just knew, people talk about these feelings. I just knew she was the one, or I knew he was the one from the moment that I met them. And I vividly remember the moment that I very first saw you in Essex at an event with a company that I was involved with at the time, and I was speaking that particular day. And you come up and you had this warmth around you that anyone that knows you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know Agi, then definitely connect with him on socials and get to know him. But from that moment, I just knew that there was something about you, and I'm looking forward to sharing a bit about what that is. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show, and looking forward to having you involved.
If I can add to that, I remember also that first time we met, and you had like a 45 minute speech in a whole day event, which was about property investing. But your mindset speech was for me the most interesting part of the whole day. I was instantly inspired by learning immediately from you. Yeah, I remember that.
Wonderful. So let's just go into a little bit of context,
Sure.
because you, as we just heard, of doing some wonderful things. And when we first met, you were looking to get involved in property at the time. It's about 5 years ago. You'd just been getting involved in property, but you've actually had a very different career. I mean, you're Dr. Agi Keramidas, but you've worked in a highly respected profession that people have spent years of their life studying to be in, which is being a dentist, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So being a dentist, and I suppose sort of helping people in a very different way, getting them out of pain in a lot of instances, in a slightly different way to maybe the way I do and the way that you do now. But so you were looking to get involved in property. You were sort of looking to maneuver out of getting into getting out of being in dentistry, and now obviously you're heavily involved in the personal development industry. You've got a phenomenal podcast called Personal Development Mastery, which anyone watching this on YouTube can see Agi's wonderful t-shirt with it on there. And we'll put the link to the podcast for people to go and listen to. But what I'd love for you to just share, because I know your story, your story from coming from Greece to the UK, and it's quite some journey, but I'd love to know, what was it that originally inspired you to be a dentist? So then when we talk about the next phase of your evolution of your career, and sort of the more personal development side of things and operating as a knowledge broker, will be particularly interesting. But yeah, that story of that career, and then obviously coming to the UK, because I know it was quite a leap of faith that you took, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And to answer the last question you made, what inspired me to be a dentist? Nothing. I was not inspired to be a dentist. I was, in a way, coerced into being a dentist, or
By who?
persuaded by my parents, mainly my mother, who was a dentist
Right.
herself. So when I was like 16, 17, it was that time to take a decision what to do with my career. So now thinking back at it, it sounds very funny to ask from a teenager to decide, in that sense, what are they meant to be doing with their life. But anyway, that was at that time. I did not have really any strength to pursue or try to persuade them of what I really wanted to do, or what I
Mm-hmm.
thought. I mean, I was 16 that I wanted to do. That had nothing to do with dentistry. It was more like being an actor, or doing something that had to do with computers, because these were my real, especially computers, were my passion.
Right.
But I was, persuaded that I will use that word very carefully into going to university and studying dentistry and
Yeah,
becoming a
you're
dentist.
influenced, right? Like so many people, they're influenced by authority figures, which are their parents,
Yeah.
grandparents, even teachers, or even social conditioning that people, like you say, I mean, you're saying persuaded. Do you back then, did you know that you didn't want to do it, but so you put up some resistance and got persuaded, or was it more that you just went with the flow because, like you said, your mother was a dentist and it was kind of just you thought you were stepping into her shoes and following her footsteps?
I didn't put much resistance.
Right.
So I was persuaded, I followed, I just accepted, you said the authority figure, I just accepted that, my parents know best.
Mm.
And I just went along with it. It's not like I went really kicking and screaming doing that, because I had, in a sense, I grew up inside the dental practice now,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
as a kid, so it was nothing unfamiliar for me. It just
yeah.
was something that, and if I can fast forward that, after a period of working there in Greece, I worked for about 8 or 9 years in my own practice. I felt like I was very comfortable. By many people's standards, I was living a life that is, what people would like to be living. I was engaged, everything was normal or good, or how people would see it as such. But I felt a deep void, a
Mm.
discontent inside of me, which I didn't know what it was. And it's difficult, when you really have no idea, because I was not into personal development in that time. I thought there was something wrong, that, you have all these things and you don't feel grateful, so there must be something wrong with you. Uh, it took me a long time to realize what Tony Robbins calls the hunger to never be satisfied, no matter how high you are. So at some point, I took the decision to move to the UK, following a dream that I had since I was a teenager, practically. At that time, anything English, I would say, would really resonate within me. The music of the 80s, or even, looking at the cars driving on the other side of the road, for me was fascinating and exotic. And I never could understand why it was.
I don't. It wasn't our weather that was exotic, though. Lots of exotic. Driving on the other side of the road might be exotic, but our weather definitely is not exotic.
It was different, but to put that into context, I realized that there was something calling me there.
Mm.
And at some point in 2010, I took the bold decision and I left everything I knew behind, like my family, friends, fiance, job, everything, and I moved to the UK, following my dream, my intuition, which I didn't know exactly what it was.
This is so. Here's what I think is fascinating about your story. By by most people's standards, you were successful. You were in a respected profession, that you'd been to university and studied and done all of that stuff. You were engaged. You had your family in Greece, but you made a decision to leave all of that behind, to follow a dream, in your words, sort of your intuition, to go and do something. But, and this is, I think, the key part here, you didn't really know even what you were going to do. It wasn't like, right, I've got absolute clarity. This is what I'm going to do when I get to England. It was like, I'm going to get there and I'll figure it out, almost, and that leap of faith, I think the courage that takes, is that something that most people listening to this, at some point they've got something that they really want to do. They know intuitively is probably the right thing to do, but it's that unknown that's preventing them, the fear of the unknown that's preventing them from doing that. So what I would love to know is, what was going through your mind? What was your thinking that enabled you to go and take that action that most people wouldn't? And that, I suppose I'm going to double down on this, because I think this is a huge learning opportunity here for people. what was it that you were consciously thinking? And now being much more aware than you ever were back then, what is it that maybe you were thinking subconsciously that you can reflect back on and connect the dots with, if you see what I mean? So two questions there.
I will try to to answer the best I can. It's a great question. Which there were two things back then that were driving me, which you know very well. The first one was I really didn't like the situation I was in
Mm-hmm.
Greece. I felt empty. There was,
Mm-hmm.
and that was affecting because I didn't know any better. I was, drinking. I was trying to drown it. I didn't know what it
Yeah.
was. So I wanted to get out of that, to get out of that pain of this situation. But I think at that time it was much, much more the going towards this instinct, this, I remember even vividly now, I would, at times I would, live my life, do whatever I was doing, and I would have daydreamings, I will call it like that, of me being in the UK and living there. Like, and I would always, lose myself in these thoughts and end up with a big smile on my face. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew that there was a big calling, and I took in many ways. It was really to answer your question about what I was thinking. The one thing was faith that this is for me. I don't know what it is, but I really believe. I feel it in my heart and in my gut that it is the right thing to do. My fears were to a large extent alleviated by first that I had support from my family. My parents told
Mm-hmm.
me, "You go, and we're behind you if that's what you want to do." And the second, I knew that whatever happens, if I could always go back, or I mean,
Yeah.
even though I didn't dwell on that at all, but the thought occurred in me that I have to do that.
I think that last one you mentioned, I know certainly with clients that I've worked with, it's a real eye-opening moment for them sometimes. So we talk about certain things they want to do, and they go, "Well, what if this and what if that and what if that?" And they go, "Well, what?" And I was saying, "Well, what's the worst case scenario?" And they go, "Well, the worst case scenario is that I have to get a job and do certain things." And I go, "Right, so that's what you have at the moment. So your actual worst case scenario is your current scenario. If that's your worst case scenario, what have you got to lose?" And that's when they have the sort of penny drop moment of going, "Well, I might as well pursue it then." So that's wonderful. So obviously you come to the UK, and then you've obviously been here since and thrived and done some great things. But
Thank
then
you.
not so long ago, you I'm writing saying sort of had a similar feeling of unfulfillment of being in the industry, right? So you've come to the UK, you've done your thing, and then you started looking at other options, which is why you started looking into property and pursuing property,
Mhm.
and doing those sort of things. And I'm right in saying, was that the sort of same unfulfillment, I suppose we'd class that as?
It was, and it was more intense this
Mm,
time around because I had just finished a master's degree in restorative dentistry 2015. And when I did that, I thought that afterwards I'm really going to implement everything I learned and I'm going to be this super duper high-end dentist, all these things. And I realized that I couldn't do any of that because there was really no spark, no passion uh, to really go
mm,
there. So, and that coincided also with me being in my early 40s. So that is something that, for most people, there is a shift
mm,
in the way that they see things. For me, it was maybe that subconscious realization that, okay, so maybe this is the second half of my life. Certainly, it's not the beginning anymore.
mm,
So
mm,
that led me really to pursue other things. And you mentioned property. That was never a passion, but it was one of the things that I was trying to do in order to figure out what it is that I want to do because I had no idea. I knew that I wanted to do more,
Mm.
but I was not sure. So I tried different things. But through property, I found personal development, which was the greatest gift for me.
So let's just talk about that if we can then. So personal development, this whole podcast is built around personal development. So now you've got a mission that you're on. Can you just sort of elaborate for people listening what that mission is?
The mission is to inspire and influence people to stand out and take some action towards the next level of their life. So,
Mm.
with the podcast, there is conversations and there is lots of information, but unless something is done with information, it's just more information, which there is no lack of information in the world. So, I always aim, and that is the mission for my podcast, to give to the listeners some actionable items, something that if they choose to and if it resonates with them, to pick something up and do it. And actually, I remember you teaching me that with those little cards at your events when you give someone an action or you ask someone to pick an action and follow through. So I went into a tangent there, but the mission is to inspire and influence people to improve their lives, really.
And look, that's where you and I are very much aligned. And I know that people listen to this, they do want to improve their life in some way or another. They want the actionable steps that they can take away. And you're exactly right. Knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. And if people can take those bite-sized chunks and put them into place and compound that over a period of time, some great stuff can happen. As we were speaking on the show, sort of before we started recording, you mentioned that you'd sort of put together a list of a few of the lessons and actions that you've taken from us working together, because I think it's about 5 years. I know we've worked together one-on-one. You've come to many of our events of like the Evolve Network and lots of different events. You've done my signature workshop, Unlock Your Potential, more times than anybody else. Whereas you've done it multiple times as a participant, but also as a crew member. Now you come and crew with us. How many times in total have you done it?
7 times.
7 times. 7 times you've come and done my signature workshop, and you've done it when it was a 1-day event. Now it's a 20 hours across 2 days, covering 11 different modules. I would love to know. You said about sort of actionable steps, and you mentioned you'd put together a list. You thought you were going to try and pull together sort of 10 things. You managed to get sort of 14 key lessons. But
Yes.
for people that are maybe listening, so that they don't have to come and do Unlock Your Potential 7 times, which they're welcome to, and I'd love them to, of course. What have been some of the key lessons that you've taken from us working together that people could maybe take from this?
Yes, and this is also very interesting because you were, and I will share that it was you were the first coach I've ever had. I had never worked with a coach before you, and that was in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So the first lesson that I'm laughing because you will personally resonate with it very much is that when you post a quote on a day on social media, it can take you a very long way.
Yeah.
Provided that you keep it. So it's almost 4 years that I have been posting one quote every day. So on its own, it doesn't do much, but it's incredible how much. And I think that I would take that as a more general lesson. No matter how small an action is, when you are consistent with it, it compounds. It becomes. And it gets so much momentum that right now, even if I wanted to stop doing that, I can't. I mean, it's part of what I do in the morning. It's not possible not to. And I actually physically post it. It's not something that is programmed. I choose one in the morning and post it.
Right. Love that. Love that. Yeah, we both definitely read. And I think you're right. The underlying lesson there is the power of compounding, no matter how small it is, what it can lead to, which is wonderful.
And the other, I'm looking now because I have the list. There are so many. I'll share. Next one I wanted to share was the North Star, which is again something I learned from you. The concept of having an ultimate goal rather than, 1 year goal or whatever it is that many people have. And not just having it, I mean, doing it in a methodical way, which I have done now, and having it in a document which is quite a few pages long and in different categories. So, what is my ultimate goal about my health, about my attitude, about my career, my finances, my personal growth, and so on. So, it's awesome, and it is incredible to have that on paper or on the computer, because I think it serves as a beacon of light or a compelling future, shall we say, that you may or you may not achieve, but you know it's there, and if you align your actions towards that direction, it doesn't matter if you reach there or not. You are growing, and that's probably, and I'm going to digress a little bit. If I had to choose one big lesson from my own personal development journey the last 5 years, is exactly that it is a journey. We really need to understand that there is no destination, there is no end point, there is and I'm not talking spiritually, I mean just everything. It is this moment. Are we growing? Are we enjoying the journey? It's the marvelous journey. So it took me a long time to realize that, and I still haven't 100% believed it to my core, I mean. But that is the appreciation and enjoying of the journey of life.
Love it. So what I'd love to know, because you mentioned you'd written out 14. So rather than going through all 14 in detail, if you could sort of maybe whittle through the rest of maybe another 9 or so, and then share one of the other ones that we can go into a little bit more detail in, because I'm really curious as well as to what some of these are.
Okay, then I will read you the rest of the list, and you pick which one intrigues you, and you can talk about that. So, I own the traits of my role models. You only need 10 seconds to radically change your state.
Mm-hmm.
The power of affirmations and personal declaration. A big distinction on praising the effort rather than the result. So saying great effort rather than well done. The tremendous power of accountability. Reframing good and bad into does it serve me or does it not serve me. And 2 more I have here. One was the concept of ikigai, which was a big realization, and the values that we hold highest come from our perceived voice. There are many, Will, and the last one that I will share on the list is reframing a physical sensation that many of us would interpret as I want to get out of here into excitement, and saying I'm excited. It's the same physical sensation, but rather than feeling scared, translating it as excitement, because it will lead to a very different action.
So I'm just going to interrupt really quickly in the show. This is a bit that we're adding in. Agi and I have just got off. We said this has been great. It was a great conversation. And he grabbed his workbook, right, from the first event. He started talking. I said, Agi, you need to stop. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube, then he's just showing it up there. You need to, because I know what he hasn't even gone into what he's about to share, but what he's about to share around his owning the traits of the greats. I think could be really, really interesting. I wanted to make sure we record it. So we're adding this little bit in at the end. So sorry, Agi, I interrupted you.
Not at all. And I was thinking of mentioning it earlier when we were talking about the traits of the role models, but the conversation went elsewhere. So I was sharing with you, and now you said we must re-record this, that one of those 5 people, the 5 role models that I had written on my list in that Unlock Your Potential event was you. And I wrote down 5 traits that I recognized in you, and then I realized that I had them in me. But when I was writing the traits, I didn't know. I was just writing the traits of my role model. So I wrote here first, inspired me and gave me tools to change my life. Second, self mastery is his highest value. Third, he is a charismatic speaker. Fourth, he is knowledgeable on personal development. And five, he has a great vision and mission. And it's true. And when I realized that, and I had similar traits with the other role models that I've put on that list. Inspirational is the key theme in all of them.
Mm.
So there you go. I just wanted to share that, and because that was in 2019, July 2019. So it's now I'm and I shared that before we started recording, that it feels, in a way, it's very rewarding, and it's great to see that, you know when you do work on yourself, and someone, you can really see things in a very different way. Because when I first met you, and you said about, that initial moment that we met, I had instantly put you on a pedestal, and you were there until that day when we did that event. So for the first 2 or 3 years that I knew you, were always, there. And that was, that day, it was very illuminating, in a way, to realize that I share the same traits as Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi and yourself and the other people I had put in my list. And here I am now, actually having this conversation with you for your podcast, and being on a list of guests that you have interviewed, which I really feel humbled to have my name on the same list as some of your exceptional guests. So I just wanted to share that, and thank you very much again for all your influence on me, and the inspiration that you gave me. Obviously, I took it as well. I was really resonating with you and your message, and I followed you. But again, thank you very much from my heart for, you know um, our lives meeting or joining paths. I mean, I came from Nafpaktos in Greece, and you are from Essex, and it's great.
There are no
So
coincidences, only synchronicities, right? And look,
absolutely.
I'm truly grateful for all those wonderful things that you just said. Thank you very much. And yeah, as you reel off those traits, I absolutely see those traits in you. I absolutely, your noble mission, the depth of knowledge you have around personal development. Now you've immersed yourself in this area, the phenomenal guests that you've had on your show, all those different things. So yeah, Agi, thank you. It's great. I know you're doing some great work and continue to. So that's a little bonus bit for everybody. There's like I say, I'm biased. There's lots of great little lessons there, but I think a couple that we could expand upon
Yes.
for people that are listening. I mean, I've written down 3 here, if we can. One of them is great effort. So you, rather than me explain it, it was a profound lesson for you. So sharing what that shift in perspective was for you and why it was important.
We say that all the time, don't we? Well done. Or when someone does something, we say well done, and we don't realize that what we're doing is praising the result, which is
Mm,
great if you have the result. But sometimes it's the effort that matters, because if I put on my effort, I might or might not achieve the result. But if I have to wait for being praised for the result, then I might not even start trying. Whereas if I'm praised for my effort, even if I don't achieve the result, then I will put even more effort next time to do so. So, and I use that always. I don't like anymore to use the phrase "well done" on
mm,
something, because yes, it is well done, but it took effort to become well done. So I prefer to praise the effort that led to that.
yeah, no, it's a great little lesson. Um, this one I think is really interesting because it's something that the majority of people have never really got their head around, which is owning the traits of the people you admire. But I'm going to also add to that as well the opposite of that, which is owning the traits of the people that you don't like or have some feeling of remorse towards or whatever it might be. But yeah, if you could expand your why that was an important lesson for you.
It was the first time that I took people out of a pedestal, because I had heard of the concept, don't pedestalize people and don't look up to them, and but model them instead, or look into them, as you say. But it was the first time that I actually understood that at an emotional level. I remember going through that exercise at the Unlock Your Potential. So basically, for people who, I will explain the exercise if I may. So you
Yeah,
write down 3 to 5 people, I think it was 5, that you perceive to be your role models. Could be people you know or that you may not know. It doesn't really matter. People that inspire you and or have. And then you write for each of these people 5 traits, 5 characteristics in particular that you admire about or you model. So it was at that time, and the first one on my list there was Tony Robbins, and I wrote, inspirational and vast knowledge and charismatic, things like that. And then I did that for my 5 people and the 5 traits for it. And then it was something that you said as a result of the exercise, that you know why you recognize these traits in people, because you have them yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to recognize them. And that brought me to tears. I remember that. And it was towards the end of the second day at that time. And I told you, well, I hadn't cried until then during the event, but I did at that time. Because I realized that all these things that I admire in people, I only admire them because I have them to in a different level, or maybe I'm not going to use quantities here, but you have that trait as well.
yeah. Nothing is missing. There's Aggie sort of alluding to sort of crying, so it's a bit of an ongoing thing. At my event, pretty much everybody at some point. Some people it's within the first couple of minutes. Some people it's not right until literally in the final minutes of the 20th of hour will end up having a tear or two. And they're not tears of sadness. I'd hasten to happen. Why do I want to sign up to this event? This would be terrible. They're tears of gratitude, tears of inspiration, and it's a powerful, life-changing event. I mean, I know I'm biased. I've created the content to develop towards it, but you're exactly right. In that moment, realizing that you have those traits, and the reason that person that we put on a pedestal is on the pedestal is because we're being too humble in ourselves to acknowledge what we see in them is in us. Mm-hmm. And the exercise Aggie's mentioned is a really powerful one. There's a Chris Akabusi quote, which is don't look up to people, look into them. But equally, the opposite of that, which is sort of my variation of the quote, is don't look up to people, look into yourself, and see what you see in yourself, what you see in them, because the fact that you can see it and the fact you can acknowledge it, it's there somewhere. It might be in a different form, granted, but it's there. It is there, and people will be seeing you in those ways when you can acknowledge yourself. And so very, very powerful. But equally, and this is again another way of humbling ourselves, is that we can put ourselves on the pedestal sometimes. When we put other people down and make them out to be quote open quote bad people, then we also, the fact that we can acknowledge what we see in them is in us in some way. So we need to get creative sometimes and look for the trait, action or inaction in a particular area of life to acknowledge where we've done to a greater or lesser extent what we see in them. And it's a really humbling exercise that creates a level playing field. And the last one, which I suppose is sort of kind of relevant, is you said about seeing the good and the bad.
Into reframing it into does it serve me or not? Is
Yeah,
that what
yeah,
you
yeah,
mean?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, how well this isn't a bad thing or this isn't a good thing, but yeah, seeing how it serves.
Yes, and that's I think it's something that it's very deep programmed into us that this is good, this is bad. I like this, I don't like it. It is very much inside us. Reframing into something, whether it serves me or not, puts a very different perspective
Mm,
into things, because something that you might deem as bad, if it serves you, if you decide that it serves you, then maybe that definition of bad does not apply, and vice versa as well. I think it's much more representative of what an action or a behavior is, rather than the term good or bad, which is completely misleading and
mm,
very, very subjective. I think it's more objective. If something serves me,
yeah.
it's 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 different. It's very different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for sharing those lessons. It's always interesting to hear what it is that people have taken, and I know there's things that you've mentioned before that have been great for you, but I've never heard you list them off like that. I didn't realize you'd put together that list before we got on the call today. So thank you very much for that. I'm glad that there'll be people listening to this going, oh yeah, that's really good. So thank you for sharing that. What I'd love to just touch on, sort of again, expanding upon the knowledge. I think one of the positions that I'm blessed in, that you're blessed in, is that when you spend your time around incredible people and you get immersed in learning from them, there's some life-changing, complete paradigm shifting insights that you get. You at the time of doing this podcast, I think you've done about 128 episodes of the Personal Development
Yeah,
Mastery podcast
spot
now,
on.
um, and you've had some, again, incredible guests. Um,
Thank you.
Rather than say, in fact, no, I'll tell you, I'm going to ask a few questions around your guests. So, um, let's do a little bit of name dropping. Who are some of the guests that you've had in terms of who they are or their roles in what they do?
Uh, if rather than name dropping right now, I feel more inspired to share different categories of people
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I
yeah.
have
We can do
interviewed.
that absolutely.
So, because it's difficult to just drop some names, it doesn't. But initially, when I started, it was mainly people from the coaching space, because
Mm-hmm.
I was very much, involved into personal development. It's very easy to be drawn into coaching, NLP, and all these characteristics. And I still very much enjoy speaking with coaches, but there were also entrepreneurs, business people who scaled. I have spoken with quite a few, and that's something that is becoming a very interesting niche lately for me. Some people that are very involved in spirituality or spiritual teachers in one or the other way, and I'm getting slightly different, directions and learnings. And I don't know if that answers your question, or I have gone into a different
No,
direction now.
it's answered it wonderfully. Yeah, I mean, you've got spirituality, business people, like you say, coaches in the personal development space. You've had people involved with various different elements of personal development, like meditation experts, and
Mhm.
I'm right in saying that you had a shaman on at one
More
point
than
as
one,
well.
yes, yes.
So you've had multiple different people. So obviously 128 episodes. What have been some standout episodes in terms of when you've had these episodes and you've just gone, wow, I was not expecting that insight or that bit of information? What have been some standout ones for you that have been great lessons for you?
It's a great question, and a difficult one as well for me. Some standouts always are people who I have personally been inspired by, and in a way, I have this desire to speak with every single person that I have learned from in my life, I would like to speak with them in my podcast. I will try. I have so people that have coached me, or I have learned many, or have mentored me in a capacity, or inspired me by their book. They're always people that I enjoy much more um, learning from, because there is a deeper, a personal, if you want, relationship with them. Um, in terms of very big lessons, and now it's really one that sticks out. It's a very recent one. I spoke with his name is David Strickel, and he has I'm sure, Will, you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, who
Yep.
could channel the stream, or however you want to call it. So I spoke with David, who could do exactly that. And I had actually had the opportunity to speak with him on my podcast and ask him, could you demonstrate how you channel for me? And can I ask questions? And he said, for sure. So I had a question. I had the opportunity to ask a question, and the question that came to mind, and it was really, I had not pre-planned it, but I was asking, how could I share my message and what I do with the podcast to a broader audience? And the answer was so mind blowing and so profound. It spoke to me on many different levels. And I don't want to try to explain it in much detail, because if I use my words, much of the original meaning will be lost. But what they said was that the idea of lots of people, or an amount of people, the idea of quantity, is completely irrelevant on the grander scheme of things. And the overall message was to celebrate the one, because it doesn't matter how many people listen to this, or what matters is the people that have been deeply touched by it, and their life has transformed as a result of it. And that made sense to me in a very deep level, because sometimes we chase after the numbers and say, oh, I've done X amount of downloads or subscribers. And I think in the end that's irrelevant, because you could have a large following, you can have a million people following you, and at the very end, not many being really touched by what you say, just follow you. Or on the other hand, you could have very few people that follow you, that you have really made a big impact in their lives. So it's very interesting to consider those two sides. And for me, it was a big insight, realization that it's nice from a pride, if you want, point of view, or an ego point of view. It's nice to have a million listeners. It's great, but that's really not the point at all. At all.
I love that. Yeah, it's focusing. I'm gonna oversimplify this, but quality, not quantity. That depth of transformation for people, from rather than just saying you've had loads of people listen to it, is I completely get it. I completely get it. What's next for you now? So you're getting to you've got 128 episodes in the Personal Development Mastery podcast. That you're fulfilled from doing more personal development, and I know you've been transitioning in terms of building that up and developing it. But what do you see next for you, for the podcast, for that next evolution of your journey?
That's again a great question. With the podcast, I'm 128. I'm going to reach 1,000. That is, I'm going to see 4 digits in my podcast. So I'll carry on. It is having these conversations on my podcast is really what I feel the most inspired by. There are, lots of elements of personal development, all the things that I do, but the podcast and having this experience, of speaking with people who I allow them, first of all, I give them the space to express themselves and share their message, and many commend me on that feeling that they can open up really in my podcast and share things that don't necessarily share easily. So that is great for me, for the guest. It's great for me because I learn firsthand, and it's like having a different coach every week. So it's brilliant. And also for the listener, which goes back to what you asked me earlier about the mission to touch, not a million people necessarily, but the people that will resonate with the message of the podcast. And there are different messages. I mean, there's so much variety. It all falls under the umbrella of personal development, but so much versatility. So the people who resonate with the message, I hope that they can get impacted by it and do something with it, and take some action and take their life to the next level, whatever that might be for them. It's the worst thing is being stuck and not doing anything about it. Coming back to your question, that is so the podcast, I consider that to be ever increasing bank of both knowledge and also actionable items, which I was telling. So my intention is to collate and process all this information and put it into more specific topics or more deeper learning, something that I can give to people who are interested to grow and learn, rather than say, well, listen to 200 podcast episodes, the answer is out there. Be able to be very specific and say these are the experts that or however you want to call those very knowledgeable people that I spoke with on this topic, and surely one of them has the key for you. So this is the packets, the information. It's there. So that is my next step to, and ties in nicely with the knowledge broker, which you were saying earlier, as a description or an identity. I really feel that this is something that I'm meant to be doing, and I say that now I can say that easily because it feels like that. There is no resistance when I do that. It just flows through me. So I think I went into a different direction on your original question.
No, I think it's absolutely on point. It's great to hear. You've mentioned throughout the episode today about the importance of actionable steps.
Yes.
Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, right, give people 3 actionable steps to take in personal development, because it's so broad. But what I would love to do, unless you want to, I mean, you're welcome to, but what I would love to do is that one of the things that you have done successfully now on multiple occasions is got to a point in your life where you started to feel unfulfilled, and you've obviously navigated your own journey, like I say, on multiple occasions to feel fulfilled or get on the journey of feeling fulfilled. So what would be your actionable steps for anyone that right now is feeling like they're in a bit of a rut, they're in a bit of a funk, they're plateauing, and they just aren't feeling fulfilled? What would be maybe three actions that people could take to make the changes and learn from your own personal learnings?
Yes, and it is indeed a question which is a bit, dangerous, because it's difficult to find some elements that apply to everyone. But if you are stuck in a rut and you want to, the first thing I would say is to become inspired. Allow yourself to be pulled towards something that you want to change. So that if that means listening to podcasts or reading a book or attending an event, something that you do something with your personal development, actively do something. I mean, invest some of your time, whatever it is that you feel called towards. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure that you have a very good idea of something that you could do to evolve you, to grow you. Read, listen, go for a run. It all depends. And but from there, that is for me the first step. The second step is to build on that. Use the power of momentum. So, okay, you went for a run today, go again tomorrow. Or did you read a book today? Carry on reading it tomorrow. It's not one off. So it's a process, it's a journey, but start. Do a small step, commit some of your time, and do that thing that you've been putting off in terms of your personal growth, and do it. And then tomorrow, do it again. And then after a couple of days, it's going to already have created some momentum.
Love that. You saying that has just actually sparked me with one final question to ask, actually, and I'll beat myself up if I don't ask it. I know for a long time you personally, because you said you want to be inspired, right, and operating from a place of inspiration, which I get, but for quite a long time you become quite I'm going to use the word caught up, right? Almost so it felt like it was it was an obstacle around knowing your why and your purpose. You know, I don't mind. I need to find my why, I think was the conversation that we'd had on a few different occasions. And then I believe that you've kind of had a different approach to that now, and you have a slightly different view on the importance of finding a why or how you go about doing that. And so for, again, the people right now going, yeah, well, that's all good, well and good, but I don't know my why, or I need to know my why. What advice would you have for them?
Yes, I think first of all is forget the word find.
Mm,
Find your way. It's because find implies that it's somewhere that you're going to find it. I like much more the discover or create or uncover or compose your why, because your why is not standing somewhere waiting to be found. It is something that is created by your everyday actions. And maybe that sounds quite general what I'm saying, but that came to me as my own realization, because I remember I was discussing with you about that a few years back, that I want to find my why. I had even prepared a speech. I would give a talk on an event about how to find your why, and trying to use that speech to find my own why. So I was constructing the speech. But when if you want to discover or uncover that, you have to try things out. I don't think there is any other way to discover it. Again, I was about to say fine, but trying things out. I love that phrase, joyous exploration. So you are, we all are attracted or inspired to do some things. Maybe we don't for different reasons, but explore them. Just take some time and do them and see what happens. You might like it, you might not. If you like it, do more of it. And if you keep on doing more of it, you won't have to answer the question about finding your purpose, because it has somehow found you.
mm,
So doing what you are called to do, and doing really looking inside you, having some idea of, and I think all of us really, if I asked you to tell me three things that you love doing, easily people can say that, but do them, do a bit more of them, explore them, and see what happens. And then usually your why is in these things. Well, isn't it? What do you
it
think?
sure is. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with create your why. You don't find your why, you create it.
Mm.
For sure. Well, look,
Yes.
Agi, it's been wonderful having this conversation with you. Really great to catch up and great to share our conversation. This is the sort of conversation you and I would have if we were sat down having a coffee with each other. We talk about this kind of stuff. So it's really been great to have a few people that are earwigging on our conversation today. And thank you for sharing your insights on Unlock Your Potential. What I'm going to do actually, I just thought for anyone that was thinking, oh, these sounded quite interesting in terms of Unlock Your Potential and what you'd learned from it. What I'm doing is I'm going to put a link to Unlock Your Potential in the comments, and anyone that, if you decide that you want to come, type in Agi, capital letters AGI, in the as a promo code, and then you'll get a very, very special discount to be able to come along if you decide that you want to. If you listen to this on release, we've got an event that's happening in June, the end of June 2021. If not, we run them every 3 months or so anyway, and it's an event that we run virtually, so you can attend it from anywhere in the world. It's a really great event, as Agi would endorse. I haven't been 7 times, right? So
100%. And June will be the 8th.
yeah, looking forward to that. So yeah, if you want to attend it, go and check it out. We'll put the link in the show notes. Use the promo code Agi, AGI, in capital letters to be able to get access to a discount on that. For people that have just been loving the conversation, which I'm sure many listening have today, Agi, and they're thinking, right, I really want to find out more about the podcast. Where can they find you? Where can they find the podcast? And yeah, please let them know.
Sure, thank you. Well, the podcast is called Personal Development Mastery. You can find it anywhere, all major platforms, or you can go to personaldevelopmentmasterypodcast.com. Find me on social media. I'm mainly active on Facebook, but I'm also on LinkedIn, Instagram. It's all the same, Agi Keramidas, and also have a website, agikeramidas.com, which you can find me there as well.
Wonderful. Well, again, we'll put your website in the show notes for people that want to go and check that out. Hey, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been great to catch up and have the conversation. And for everybody that's been listening, I hope you found it beneficial. And until next time, make it happen.
Stand out, don't fit in.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make It Happen with Will Polston podcast. Make sure you join Will's free Facebook group, the Make It Happen community. Please support the show by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or Google Play. Share this episode with at least one friend you think would benefit from it, and give Will a 5-star review wherever you download your podcasts. Until next time, make it happen.